before the exam. Okay, so let's get started with our lesson for today. So far we have dealt with nouns, right? So far we have seen nouns, we have seen nouns, we have seen article, so all three, masculine, feminine, neuter, right? We have seen verbs, and in verbs, we have seen two tense forms. We've seen the present tense form, and we have seen the imperfect tense form, right? This has been the scope of our study so far, and it's given us very, very good building blocks into understanding the grammatical structure in biblical Greek. Now we move to another aspect in the parts of speech called prepositions, right? And so this will be our focus for today. And this is our lecture outline. We'll look at prepositions both in English and in Greek. We'll see what is a meaning. There are some form variations of how prepositions change form in different contexts. We'll see this idea of compound verbs, where prepositions combine with verbs. And then we'll see some usage of prepositions, how prepositions are generally used. And as always, we'll close with vocabulary. Prepositions in English. What is a preposition? A preposition is a word that indicates the relationship between the noun, the subject, and the object, right? So the preposition here is the word on, which is communicating the relationship between the noun and the object. Without the preposition, it would just be the apple is the desk, right? First of all, that's a bad equative sentence. But beyond that, how do you know the relationship between the noun and the object? Prepositions give us that relationship. The total construction of the preposition itself combined with the object is called a prepositional phrase. Prepositional phrase. So every time we use the term prepositional phrase, it includes both the preposition combined with the object. Greek prepositions are somewhat different from English prepositions because in Greek, the object of the preposition can be in any one of three different cases. In English, we don't really encounter this. We just say, from, we say through, and it's just the object, right? The object does not decline in English. Whereas in Greek, the object, now for all of these different prepositions, the object can be in one of three different cases, right? And what are the three different cases? the genitive, the dative, the accusative. Understandably, the object cannot be in the nominative case, right? Why? Because that is at the beginning. That's the subject, right? But in the prepositional phrase, the object can be either the genitive or the dative or the accusative. So for example, you just take ek, right? Ek could have genitive, right? Dative, accusative. Now, in this class, we will see that not all prepositions take all three cases. Some prepositions only take one case, only one of these. Some prepositions take only two cases. Some prepositions take all three cases, right? We'll look at those variations and combinations as we go. Now, what's the meaning, right? And here's where it gets a little bit tricky. The meaning of the preposition changes or is based on what is the case of its object in the prepositional phrase. So in other words, just because you see the preposition ek, you can't just see the preposition and say, I know its meaning. You don't. You have to see what is the object, in what case is it. Only after you see the case of the object in the prepositional phrase can you ascertain the meaning. Prepositions by themselves have no meaning, except the preposition which only goes with one case, right? Most prepositions, though, they have multiple case objects. Therefore, you have to see what is the case of the object and then decide the meaning. For example, Dia to Hairu. This is a prepositional phrase. Preposition plus object, prepositional phrase. Dia plus the genitive case has the meaning through. You see the preposition dia, you see that the case of the object is genitive case, and dia plus the genitive has the meaning through. Therefore, you translate through the temple. So just because you see dia somewhere in the text, you can't immediately say the meaning is through. Only if it is followed by the genitive case object, only then you will say the meaning is through. So the meaning of the preposition is based on the case of the object. Some prepositions take only one case. I mentioned that already. Example is apo. The preposition apo takes only one case. And what case is that? We'll see that in a second. Some prepositions take two cases out of the genitive, the dative, the accusative. Some prepositions take two. For example, dia, and one of it is the genitive for dia. And some prepositions take all three cases. For example, para, right? Takes all three cases. The following prepositions take objects in only one case. Okay, I need to just fix this for a second. So here are the prepositions that only take one case. What are the prepositions? Apo only takes the genitive case, and the meaning is from. Ek only takes the genitive case, meaning is out of. Right? En only takes the dative case, in. This is probably the easiest preposition to remember because it sounds so similar. En, in, right? Soon is a preposition that takes the dative case, only the dative case, with. Ice only takes the accusative case, into. Cross only takes the accusative case, means to or toward, right? And apo and ek have some level of semantic similarity because they both have that idea of sort of out of, from. There's something and it's coming out of that, right? Apo and ek. En and soon is only with the dative case, in or with, a little more closer association. Ice and pros is somewhat opposite to apo and ek. The idea is in, into, toward, right? So apo and ek, outward, the genitive case only. Ice and pros, into, toward, accusative case only. Within this, if you want to think about in and with, you can see en and soon. So if I were to just, if we just want to conceptualize this as, say, prepositions that go out, apo, ek, right? Prepositions that come in is what? No, en and soon are in or with. And prepositions that idea have the idea of into or toward or no, into, ice and cross, right? And this only goes with the genitive case. This only goes with the dative case. This only goes with the accusative case. Okay? That's one way you can try to remember this. Next. Following prepositions can take objects in two cases. Need to fix this one. Prepositions that take objects in two cases. And the only two cases are genitive and accusative. So you notice that prepositions that take objects in two cases don't take the dative, right? Previously, the prepositions that take the dative is en and soon, right? What is this? There it is. So, dia plus the genitive means through. The same dia plus the accusative means because of. And it's quite different here, right? You think about the idea, this through idea is easy maybe for us to remember because we can, let me write it in English. We think of a diameter or a diameter, right? Which is circle goes through, right? The diameter goes through the circle, right? So that is easy for us to remember. Dia as the idea of through with the genitive case. But with the accusative case, it's giving reason, because of. Kata plus the genitive is against. Like kata lambano, against, right? We see this used quite a bit. Paul also extensively uses the preposition kata to communicate against, cutting across, right? Against this, kata. Kata, cut across, cutting against, something like that. Kata. Kata plus the accusative is according to. And again, it's almost opposite here, right? Kata plus genitive is against, going against. But kata plus accusative case is according to, in line with. See that wide semantic range that it has. Then meta plus the genitive is with. Go with. In the Gospels, we see this so many times. When the Gospel writers are writing about someone who's going with another individual, they'll say meta, with him. But then the case has to be genitive, the object. The object in the prepositional phrase has to be genitive, with. Meta plus the accusative is after. But you notice meta has that positional meaning, right? It's either with or it's after someone, positionally. So meta communicates position. When it's with the genitive, it communicates sort of alongside, with. But when it is with the accusative, it's communicating after, right? Peri plus the genitive is concerning. Peri plus the genitive is concerning. We see this in 1 John chapter 1. Concerning the things that we have heard, the things that we have seen and touched, right? Peri. Peri plus genitive is concerning. Peri plus accusative is around. And the word there is perimeter, right? The meter which is around, perimeter. When you're trying to measure the thing around, perimeter. Peri plus accusative. Diameter is through. Dia plus genitive is through. Peri plus accusative is around. Okay. Huper plus the genitive, on behalf of. On behalf of. Huper plus accusative is above. This is maybe a little easier to remember because we have the Hindi word upar. No? Upar. English, not English. Hindi word upar. Huper. Kidhar hai? Upar hai. Huper. Right? Which is above. Huper plus accusative is communicating the upar idea, above. Okay? Just something to help us remember. Hupo. This was huper, now hupo. Huh? Hupo plus the genitive is by. Something is happening by this, you know. Hupo is plus the genitive is by. Hupo plus the accusative is under. Upar, now niche. Huh? Think about when you see hupo, see niche. Let's see if I remember in Hindi here. Niche. Perfect. Hupo, think of niche, but accusative. So you see how in the accusative case, huper and hupo are communicating position, right? Above or below, under. Just to help you remember, you know, there's that word, there's the, in Ephesians and in Colossians, Paul, when he gives the family, not the family code, what's code is the household code, he uses the word submit, no? There, the Greek word is hupotatso, to be positioned under. Tatso is to be positioned. Hupo, where you're positioned under, which is that word submit. So hupotatso, be positioned under, submit yourself, right? Okay. So all these things are just pointers to help us remember. End of the day, we just have to remember one way or the other. You want to come up with some mnemonic devices. You want to, come up with something clever to help you remember. So be it. Or you just brute force memorize it. That's another way. But we're supposed to know all of this. Next, following prepositions can take objects in all three cases: genitive, dative, accusative. In the prepositions that take two cases, there's no dative, right? But now in the prepositions that take three cases, all three possible, only, thankfully though, there are only two prepositions that take all three: genitive, dative, and accusative. The two prepositions that take objects in all three cases are epi and para. Epi and para. Epi plus genitive on, epi plus dative upon. Something is on, something is upon it. Epi plus accusative against. On, upon, against. Again, somewhat positional. Something is on it, upon it, almost like sitting on it, and something is against it, maybe leaning against it. Para. Para plus genitive is from. What else has the idea of from? Anybody remember? One of the prepositions that goes with one case.
First one.
What's the preposition? Ek.
Ek.
Good. Ek. Right? Ek also has the idea of from. Para plus genitive is also from. Right? Para plus the dative is with. What was the preposition that has the idea of with? In and with.
Meta.
Yeah, meta has. Right? Meta has with. Meta is either with or after. But we also have soon. Soon is also with. Right? Meta goes with, see here. Meta goes with a genitive. Where is the there's also soon. Soon plus dative is also with. And then para plus accusative is beside. Para plus accusative is beside. Okay. So there are your prepositions. These are the prepositions. And we already made a note of this. The object of a preposition will never be in the nominative case because that is the subject. Translating prepositions. Oh, good. When translating prepositions with the genitive, do not use the word of. Likewise, with the dative, do not use the words to or for. So, if we go back to our previous study in the nouns, we said that the genitive case communicates possession. And so we generally translate that as of something, right? So when we say, for example, to Kuriyu, right? We know this is genitive, so automatically we want to communicate possession, so we say of the Lord, right? Same thing with the dative. We know dative communicates indirect object. How do you usually communicate indirect object? Using the word to or for. He kicked the ball to Mike, right? So the moment we see a dative case, we translate it as either to or for, right? We can't do that with prepositions though. Why? Because in the prepositional phrase, which is preposition plus object, the case of the object is only telling us the meaning of the preposition. It's not trying to modify the noun itself, the main noun, the subject, right? The case of the object in the prepositional phrase is only helping us identify the meaning of the preposition. So, when you're translating prepositional phrases, ignore the inherent meaning of the case. Without this prepositional phrase, this would be translated of the house, right? But because it's part of a prepositional phrase, we just say from the house. So you will almost translate the object of the prepositional phrase like the accusative case. You will use the case of the object of the prepositional phrase only to identify the meaning of the preposition and translate the noun as it is, like the nominative case or the accusative case. Is this clear?
Yeah. So, if the object is in some other case, so what we are understanding now is that the preposition, what it is denoting, that case will be superior to it.
Say that again. Now, use this as an example. What are you saying here?
So, for example, if we translate it, it will be off.
You mean without the preposition?
Yeah.
This would have been of the house.
Yeah.
Correct.
So now with the preposition, this becomes from the house.
Correct.
So, but off and from are different cases. No?
Off and from is not case.
Both of them are denoting genitive case.
No, this is communicating position. A preposition is communicating position, not possession, but position. For example, the Lord came from the house.
Okay, the Lord came of the house. Doesn't make sense.
Exactly. So when you have an object in the prepositional phrase, ignore the translation of the case of the object. Translate this noun just like the accusative case or the nominative case, without of, to, or from. Use the case, just house. Use the case of the object to know what's the meaning of the preposition. Okay? This is a very important thing. So this from of the house is wrong. It's just from the house. That's big sound means that it's wrong. It's just from the house, right? So what has happened to the genitiveness of this object? It's useless. Well, it's only useful for us to know the meaning of the preposition, but it never enters the translation. Okay? Yeah.
Meaning of the preposition means we already have a meaning of the preposition. It's like the case it has to, the case it will communicate, whether it is accusative or dative.
Exactly. Exactly. We just learned that prepositions gain their meaning from the case of the object. Okay? Now, prepositions also vary the form. So these guys are quite varied, right? They vary their meaning based on the case of the object. Now they also vary their form. What do we mean? Now take, for example, the preposition ek. And the preposition ek means out of or from, right? Now when ek has the preposition ek has the kappa when followed by a word that begins with a consonant, but becomes X when the following word begins with a vowel. Now, for example, well, let's say ek, I just now thought of a word. Let's see if they have one. Yeah, this is good. Eknomu. Eknomu. Ekanthropon. It doesn't work, right? Because the next word is a vowel. it becomes X anthropon. Just a second. Yeah, there we go. Okay. So whenever ek is before a word that has a consonant, it just remains ek. But when it is followed by a word that begins with a vowel, like anthropon, alpha is a vowel, it's not ek, but the kappa becomes a xi. And it seems like this is happening because of phonetic reasons. Question is, why is there no article? There could be an article, but if it is an article, then it will always be ek. Why? Because tau is a consonant, right? There could be an article. So that's an interesting thing. Let's see here. It's not working. So had this been ek, tone, on, through, phone, it will still be ek. Why? Because the tau is a consonant. But if it's no article, it becomes X with a xi. So is there any change in the meaning of ek? Absolutely not. Whether you look at whether it's a ek or a x, it's the same meaning. It's just the form is different. Most prepositions that end with a vowel drop their final vowel when the following word begins with a vowel. So let's say you have a preposition and the last letter of your preposition is a vowel. And let's say you have the next word begins with a vowel. This last vowel in the preposition drops out because in Greek, vowel clashing is disliked, right? Or rather, stuff happens. We saw that in contract vowels, right? Example, you have the preposition dia, and dia means
Through.
Or
Because of.
Either through or because of. Whether it's depends on whether it's the genitive or the accusative. Dia plus genitive is through. Dia plus accusative is because of. But for this form variation, let's note the fact that it ends with a vowel. Dia ends with a vowel. Now, dia is this. What is that? Yeah, I don't know why the car is there. But the point is, what if the next word is ep angelias? Ep angelias, which is also beginning with a vowel. What is happening to the alpha? It's dropping out. So when you say these are anywhere with the accent, you know that this is a dia. Okay. D is a dia. It's just a form variation. No change in meaning. Still has the meaning of with the genitive, it is through. With the accusative, it is because of. Exceptions. Peri. Peri has the meaning of what? Concerning or around. Right? Peri plus genitive is concerning. Peri plus accusative is around. Peri and pro, they experience no changes. The iota and omicron remain as it is, even if they are preceding a word that begins with a vowel. Another example. Para. Para plus Angelus, the alpha is dropping out and there's an accent, right? Parangelus. These prepositions lose their accent and are pronounced with the following word. So when we see this par and Angelus, something called Ellison happens. And what is Ellison? Is when you pronounce them together. Even though there's a space here, when we are pronouncing them, we just say Parangelus. Ellison. Words are clubbed together when this thing happens, where the last vowel is dropped out in the preposition. Prepositions that end in a P or T. If an elided preposition's final letter, and what is elision? Elision is where this is happening, right? Where the prepositions lose their accent and they club in the sound with the next word. You merge their sound. When this elision is happening, and the preposition's final letter is either a P or a tau, and the following word's vowel has a rough breathing mark, the consonant of the elided preposition is changed to its aspirated form. This looks very, very complicated, but once you see an example, it is so simple, right? It's very intuitive. You see here. What's happening here? Actually, the preposition here is apo, from, right? Apo plus he me ron. What is hemera? Days, right? So elision is happening here. Why? Because vowel plus vowel, they're clubbing together, right? But the preposition's final vowel, elided final letter, sorry. Once the vowel drops out, the final letter here is a P. P. The pa sound, the P, now has to be elided or sounded together with the A. So let's say you're just saying up, he mera, he up, hemeron, up hemeron, right? I think there's a sound difficulty there. So what happens to that pa? It takes a more rough sound. Why? Because there's also a rough breathing mark here. So the pa sound becomes the fa sound of hemeron. See how much more easier it's to say? Of hemeron, elision, of hemeron, up hemeron, up hemeron. It gets difficult. Of hemeron, easier. That's the aspirated form. The aspirated form of a P is a fa. Aspirated form of a tau is a pa. It's just to help in sounding. Let's just to understand this a little more, let's see the next example. What is actually this? Meta. Meta plus he, me, ras, right? Again, vowel with the rough breathing mark. Here's a vowel at the end, vowel plus vowel, vowel drops out. Elision is happening, sounding together. There's a tau though here, right? Pa or ta, there's a tau. Now the tau just takes on an aspirated form. It takes a little more of a rough form. Instead of ta, it's ta. Methemeras. Methemeras. Right? Very simple. Okay? So elision is happening. Vowel is getting dropped out. Rough breathing mark is here. If it's a pa here, it becomes a fa. If it's a tau here, it becomes a ta. That's all. Quite simple. This is just the summary of all that we looked at with its changes. Okay. Same thing is happening with upo as well in the elision, no? If it's followed by a rough breathing mark, vowel, a word with a vowel and a rough breathing mark, omicron drops out, p, pa becomes a fa, right? As simple as that. Same thing with ta, kata. Ta will either be, ta will become a tha. So oftentimes you'll see kat, Why? Because the next word is a vowel with a rough breathing mark. So whenever you see these forms, don't get confused. Remember these variations in prepositions. Compound verbs. Compound verbs. Sometimes a preposition is added to the beginning of a verb to alter its meaning. Now, we do this in English as well. Fill is a verb. Fill is a verb. Not like Philip, but like filling, right? Fill. But then we add this preposition back, and we have this new word called backfill in English. It's a compound verb. Another example. You have the verb hold. You add the preposition up, and now it's a new word. Uphold, right? Load, download. When basically the same thing happens even in Greek. You will see a verb. What happened? Yeah. You will see a verb, you'll see a preposition that gets prepended to the verb and it becomes a new word. Compound verbs and augments. Now we do know some verbs have augments at the beginning, right? In which tense form? In the imperfect tense form, there's an augment. Compound verbs are augmented after the prepositional prefix. See an example here. Ep, erotao. Ep, erotao. So we know epi is a preposition. Epi and erotao. They've combined. Where is the augment happening? Usually the augment happens at the beginning of the word, at the beginning of the verb, right? The augment usually goes at the beginning of the word. But in compound verbs, the augment goes after the prepositional prefix. So after epi, but it's a iota, right? It's a vowel, so it's getting dropped out. The augment is going after the prepositional phrase. Same thing. Hupagon. When you have to augment this in the imperfect, you don't add the eta before the compound verb. You realize that there is hupo here. Hupo plus ago, go, right? So the omicron has dropped out. We already saw that because vowel plus vowel. So it's just hoop, go, go. Now, let's say you want to add an augment to this in the imperfect tense form. You don't add the augment here. Why? Because you know this is a compound verb. You add it after the preposition. You add it here. Hoop, agon. Remember the on ending in the imperfect tense form. Augment is added. Augment is added after the prepositional prefix. Some other examples, you can look at that. But the same thing always, right? Augments added after the prepositional phrase. Now, How are the prepositional phrases used? Sometimes prepositional phrases are used to communicate an adverbial idea. What's an adverb? An adverb is a word that qualifies the verb. He runs, right? Runs is the verb. He runs fast. Fast is an adverb. Why? Because fast is qualifying or modifying the verb. And this adverbial idea can be communicated using prepositional phrases. Example. So adverbs are verbs which modify verbs. They usually answer the question where. Where is it happening? When is it happening? How is it happening? Why is it happening? Right? He runs fast. How is he running? Right? So an example here. Ex Elton, ek to Hairu. Ek to Hairu is the prepositional phrase. And what is this communicating? He went out of the temple. He went out of the temple. Ex Elton, he went out of the temple. He went out of the temple, right? So you see how this prepositional phrase is modifying the verb. He went. Where did he go from? He went out of the temple. Prepositions communicate an adverbial idea. Prepositions can also communicate adjectival ideas. What's an adjective? An adjective modifies the noun. The man spoke. The good man spoke. Good is an adjective. Good is modifying man, right? And prepositions can also communicate that sort of an adjectival idea, which communicates some quality about the noun, some aspect about the noun. Example. Ten doksan tem para tu monu thiu. Ten doksan, the glory. Ten para can take any one of the three cases. Here it's taking the genitive. Tu monu theu. So let's see what's happening here. The glory, and here the article is functioning like a pronoun, which, by the way, the articles in Greek are the most versatile things. Some people have counted 51 different ways, something like that, some crazy number, about 50 different ways by which articles work. Here the article is functioning like a pronoun, which the glory, which from the only God, right? And here's a prepositional phrase, para tu monu theu. Monu only, theu God, right? Only God. So the glory, which is from the only God. So what is the prepositional phrase communicating? A prepositional phrase is answering the question, which glory? The glory which is from the only God. The idea of an adjective. It's in a way modifying glory. It's not just any glory. It's that great glory which is from the only God. Modifying the noun. Answering the question, which, what kind? some aspect about the noun. Some aspect about the noun. Prepositions may also simply follow an article which functions like a noun. For example, you'll see an article, you'll see a article, you'll see a preposition. This just functions like a noun now, right? Example, ta en to cosmo. Ta. Let's see if somebody can parse ta. Somebody please parse ta.
The neuter.
Please say that again.
Neuter.
Neuter.
It can be nominative, accusative.
Nominative or accusative.
Can be singular.
No. To is singular. Ta
Okay,
is plural.
Plural.
Okay. So next week, midterm needs a good amount of refreshing. Ta. So usually when we see ta, it's just the, right? But ta is so versatile. This is functioning like a noun. The things, right? It's just the things. Why? Because it's plural. The things in n, this is the preposition in, the world. The worldly things. Right? The things in the world, the worldly things. See how the prepositional phrase combined with an article has just become a noun. Beautiful. Prepositional phrase combined with the noun has just become. So if you were to go through this journey, ta is the things in the world, but really it's saying the worldly things. The worldly things. Right? The things in the world. It's functioning like a noun. A preposition prefixed to a verb is often repeated as a matter of style. A preposition prefixed to a verb is often repeated as a matter of style. You see, ek is the preposition. It's prefixed to the verb poruetai. Somebody please parse poruetai.
Passive. Middle passive, singular, third person.
Middle passive.
Singular.
Singular.
Third person.
Third person.
Present tense.
Present.
Indicative.
Indicative.
Or the meaning.
What's the lexical form?
For your mind.
For you or my meaning?
Yeah.
I come, I go. So what's the translation? For you a tie.
We are being on.
All right. Let's make the midterm as difficult as possible then.
We are being
Okay. The meaning is he, she, it
He's being
comes
gone.
or goes. Okay.
passive. No.
But for
Gone.
you, it's a
Oh, okay. Only middle person.
middle only word. Okay. But what is happening here? The preposition is prefixed to the verb. So this is a compound verb. We just studied this. The ek is again repeated here, right after this. What is this? You just said ek, out from, comes out from, comes out from. Again from the stomatos auton. Fire, poor fire, came out from their auton, their stomatos, their mouth, right? So why 2 times the ek? Just a style. That's how it is, right? Nouns and adjectives that follow prepositions are often considered definite, even if they do not have an article. Nouns or adjectives that follow prepositions are often, not always, but often considered definite, even if they are anarthrous, without an article. So you see a preposition, you see the noun or adjective that follows it, even if it's anarthrous, even if it does not have an article, most often you just translate it definitely. So you say, from the Lord, when you translate it. You add the definiteness, even if there is no article. From the Lord. In the New Testament era, all the books that we read in our holy scriptures of the New Testament, there is increased usage of prepositions. It's used widely. You see so many prepositions as you read. As a matter of fact, as you've been working on your assignments, you've already seen a number of these prepositions. Why? Because they have a very increased usage. So, for example, you see, and there's, te, trite, hemera. This communicates the third day, right? But you see, en, te, trite, hemera. In the third day or on the third day. Finally, vocabulary. Autos. Autos is a pronoun. He, she, it. Save, self-save. Autopilot. Ego. I. Ego. I. Hemes. We. Hemes. We. We saw ego already in the context of ego, eimi. I am. Right? Ego is I. Hos. Hos is a pronoun. It's a relative pronoun. Autos is a personal pronoun. Hos, who, which, that. Stu, you. Humes, you all. So this is first person. This is second person. Ego, su. Hemes, we. Humes, you. In the plural. Artos, bread. Second declension now. Masculine. Artos, bread or food. Dikaiosune, righteousness or justice. Paul uses this many, many times. The righteousness of God. Romans 3. Dikaiosune. Numerous papers and books have been written about this. Dikaiosune, righteousness. Irene, peace. Irene, peace. Irene, people name their daughters Irene, right? Means peaceful. Most children who are named Irene are highly unpeaceful. That's another thing. Exousia, authority, power. And you see ex here, right? It's the preposition ek, because it's followed by a vowel. It becomes a xi, ex, exousia, authority. Thalassa, lake or sea. Sounds like Thalassery, which is a Kerala restaurant by the sea, right? Thalassa, remember Thalassery, sea or lake. Laos, crowd. The word laity is the general public, the crowd. Laos. You see these two words a lot in the Gospels, right? Because Jesus gets into a boat, he goes to the Thalassa, and he preaches to the Laos crowd. Hodos, the way, the road. Exodus, Hodos, the journey through the road. Hodos, road. Oikia, home, dwelling, family. IKEA, you go and buy stuff for your home in IKEA. Oikia is your home, your dwelling, family. Oikos, house, household, family. Ophthalmos, eye. Ophthalmology. That's not right. Ophthalmology. Ophthalmos. Eye. Topos. Topography. A place. Topos. Topography. A place. Let me stop the screen.